What's going on, everybody? It's Parker Fox coming at you from the WaterWave podcast studio here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm so excited to bring y'all episode 1 of my new podcast called The Double Down Podcast, presented by WaterWave. This podcast is special to me because it's all about the journey that us as athletes take, overcoming adversity and just dealing with things that come up in your life and how you approach them mentally, emotionally, and physically. Today's episode is just an introduction. It's the start of this whole thing, and it's super exciting for me. We're up here early in the morning getting this thing filmed at the WaterWave podcast studio, and I'm just excited to get this thing going. It's been a long time in the works. You know, we've been thinking about this idea for a long time, so I want to give a special shout out to WaterWave for making this thing happen here in their podcast studio. You're going to see me a lot more here in the studio. You're going to hear me on the mic on all platforms, and I'm just excited to get this thing going. So I want to start out with an intro about myself. For you guys that don't know me, my name is Parker Fox. I'm from Matamidi, Minnesota. And I am a current basketball player at the University of Minnesota, where I am in my 6th year. We're going to explain all that kind of stuff later, but going to start at the beginning. Who I am. You know, I grew up in Matamidi, Minnesota, 20 minutes east of the cities, in a really loving, awesome family. Grew up playing all the sports, grew up cheering sports, grew up, you know, just being a part of sports. Sports have been in my life my whole life, and I knew I wanted to play sports at a very young age, but it wasn't until high school until I really got serious about sports, and specifically basketball. Basketball was something I fell in love with at a really early age, but it didn't really develop into something very serious until about my junior year of high school. You know, I knew I loved the sport growing up, but once I hit my junior year, I was really able to, expand and grow and tune into my true love and passion for the sport. Once I kind of found that passion, I just put the work in. Had a really good junior year, went on to have a pretty good senior year, and then from high school, I committed to Northern State University in Aberdeen, South Dakota. For those of you that don't know about Northern State University, it's a Division II university in South Dakota with a rich basketball history, with a rich environment, with crazy fans, with a lot of basketball culture. So I was super excited to go to Northern, but Northern was just kind of part of my first journey in this basketball world. You know, like I said, I knew I wanted to play basketball, and I knew basketball was something that was going to be there for me for hopefully the rest of my life. Whether it was, playing the sport or whether it was working in the sport, I knew basketball was going to be something that I love to do, and it was going to carry me throughout my life. So I attended Northern State, where I graduated from Northern State in 4 years. In my last season at Northern State, I was an All-American, an academic All-American. I was first team All-Conference, Conference Player of the Year, and I was able to have a really great last year at Northern before I decided to enter the transfer portal. For those of you that don't know what the transfer portal is, it's basically a website that you can go into, and teams can recruit you again. So basically, you're kind of a free agent in the NCAA realm. And when I decided to do that, it was kind of a whirlwind of emotions and excitement. And I heard from almost every single school in the country, and I was just incredibly blessed to be able to be a part of this process with all these coaches and talk to these amazing basketball names and basketball minds. And it was honestly just kind of a blessing for me because I love the sport. I loved all aspects of the sport, and I got to learn through coaches, and I got to learn through film. And so I spent my time just researching and trying to figure out what my next university was. And some people will say, well, you went to Northern for 4 years. How did you, still have eligibility? My first year I redshirted, so I got that year back, and then COVID gave me a year back. So I'm sitting in the transfer portal with 2 years of eligibility, which makes me a pretty high target. I was listed on ESPN as one of the top 100 transfers in the country. I was a highly sought after guy in terms of, getting to the next university, and that's where my journey kind of starts. So I released that I would be committing to the University of Minnesota, my dream school, somewhere I grew up cheering. University of Minnesota is 20 minutes from where I grew up. So I just couldn't turn down the University of Minnesota. My recruiting pitch from Coach Ben Johnson was, imagine going somewhere else and thinking about what it would be like if you were at the University of Minnesota. And when he said that, I couldn't go anywhere else. Minnesota's my home, and I'm super proud and honored to be able to, rep the University of Minnesota. But this is where my journey really begins, and this is where the podcast really begins. The podcast isn't about where I came from in terms of school and basketball. This podcast is all about adversity and fighting through adversity. So I committed to the University of Minnesota, and then a few short days after, I was working out in basketball practice. And I'm going to get extremely specific here because that's what we want to do on this podcast. We really want to dive into the stories and the emotions and every single thing you feel in terms of injury and in terms of adversity. So I was in practice up in Aberdeen. This is before I was just set to graduate from the university, from Northern State University. And I was going through a workout, and I jumped up off my right leg to throw down a dunk in the workout. I landed on my left leg, and I felt my knee buckle a little bit. I didn't think too much about it. I was kind of just like, I get little bumps and bruises all the time. It's just a part of the sport. So I tried to take a step to run back on defense. And when I did, my leg kind of gave out. And I was like, oh, that's not good. I didn't have any pain. So I was like, I'm going to just bounce around and go sit down over in a chair and figure out, if this is something I need to be done for the day on, or if I can just take a quick little break and get back in there and continue to work out. So then I sit down and, I could kind of move my knee around a little bit. So I was like, oh, this probably isn't good. I started to kind of get a little bit more stressed, kind of be like, okay, what the heck is going on here? So I asked my coach if I could hop in the car and head over to the training room. So I hopped in the car with my coach, my assistant coach, and we headed over to the training room. I was actually super not really worried. I was feeling really good in the car, and I feel like, oh, I'm going to be all right. This is going to be good. I'm going to be all right. The trainer's going to look at it. We're going to put some ice on it. I'm going to be able to work out and lift in the morning. So I get to the training room and I can walk perfectly fine. So I was like, if I can walk fine, I'm going to be all right. I'm a type of guy, super optimistic kind of guy, glass half full kind of guy. And I was like, I just committed to Minnesota. I'm on top of the world right now. Nothing could bring me down. Nothing could, make this day worse. I'm a Division I basketball player now. Like I quote unquote made it to a point where, people know my name, and I'm super excited to put myself out there and show the world what I can do. So I get in the training room, and my trainer is like, what the heck happened? Like, what were you doing? I was like, oh, I was just working out, just landed on my leg. Can you just check it out? So they did this test that, probably a lot of my future guests will talk about. It's called the Lockman's test. It's a test to see if your ACL is intact. So they did this test to see if my ACL is intact, and the trainer didn't say anything, which kind of made me a little nervous. I didn't really know what exactly that meant. And he called over another trainer, and he's like, hey, could you come take a look at this? And the other trainer, she came over and she took a look at it and felt it out. They had a conversation, and this whole time I'm starting to get a little nervous. I'm starting to have some feelings in my head like, okay, this could be something more than just a little tweak. This could be something that I might have to, really be serious about. So they told me, they got together as a group, and they came back and they told me, we think you tore your ACL. Man, it still gives me shivers to this day. Just being where I was at and, where I planned on going, and the emotions flooded me. It's honestly still hard to talk about to this day, but the emotions just came over me, and I grabbed a towel and I put it over my face, and I just took a minute, and not knowing what to feel or how to feel it or why I was feeling it, but the emotions just ran over me, and I sobbed for a good amount of time. I was able to be consoled by my trainer and be told that this isn't for certain. They want to go get an image. They want to get an MRI and make sure because you can't exactly tell until you go in there with professional machinery and see that the ACL is actually torn. So I headed over to the hospital with a pretty good mindset. I listened to what the athletic trainers had told me, but at the same time, I was like, I've heard of miracles before, and maybe, this is just a quick little fight to show me how real this is, but I'm going to be all right. So I sat down in the MRI machine and put the headphones on, and for those of you who haven't been in an MRI machine before, it's a very loud machine, and it's, pretty daunting. It's a pretty scary machine that you have to sit in for about a half hour, and you can't move. So that whole time I just sat there thinking, what is this going to be? What does this entail for me? And, trying to be as positive as possible. It's tough when you go through something like this. And I know our future guests will talk about the different emotions that are running through your head. But I get out of the MRI machine and I go home, and they told me the doctor's going to be calling me at some point today to let me know what the injury is. So I'm waiting for that call, and I'm sitting there, and I finally get a call from a random number. So I'm assuming it's the doctor, and the doctor calls me and he says, "Parker, you tore your anterior cruciate ligament, which is your ACL. You also tore your lateral and your medial meniscus." So I ripped up just about everything in my knee that makes an athlete able to do what they love to do, what they can do as an athlete. And when I got that call, it was the confirming that I didn't want to hear, and I didn't have as many emotions as I did the first time that I heard the fact that it could be true. But I told the doctor that I appreciate him looking at it. I'm going to give my family a call, and I called my mom, and I just couldn't stop. I couldn't control my emotions. And, I told her that I tore my ACL and I'm going to be out for 9 to 12 months and I have to have surgery. And this whole process is going to delay my start of my time here at the University of Minnesota. Frankly, I was a little scared if, the University of Minnesota would still want me, or if any other school would still want me. Who's going to take a Division II kid with a torn ACL? I saw the tweets. I saw people hating on me. I saw negative energy all across social media. Why would you take this kid, this D2 kid with torn ACL? And those are the things that, went through my head. And, but my mom told me, something that I'll remember for the rest of my life. And is so special to this day is, you can do this because of the type of person you are and how motivated and how hardworking you are. She said, she told me a lot of other people couldn't do this, but she's like, I believe you can because I know who you are. And from right then and there, it motivated me. It got me in the training room the next day to get ready and prep for surgery and all that kind of stuff. And my family, my mom, my dad, and my brother are my biggest supporters, and they were there for me the whole way, as well as Coach Johnson. I had to Coach Johnson here at the University of Minnesota and let him know. And I had to let him know that, I was probably not going to be able to play for him this next year. And I didn't know what his response was going to be. As a coach, I haven't signed anything yet, so he can say, hey, we don't want you anymore. But that's the opposite of what he did. He stayed right by my side, and he supported me more than anybody else, and knew the type of guy I was and the type of guy that I was going to be in the program. And he wanted me there, and I'm forever grateful for that because this place is special to me. The University of Minnesota is special to me, and I'm so honored to be here. So I go about the pre-surgery business, and I get my surgery done, and don't need to ramble on about all the physical therapy because we'll talk about that in future episodes. But it's a crazy mental, emotional, physical battle for a year-long time. But I get past it, and I'm 14 months post-surgery. I'm ready to go into my 6th year of college at the University of Minnesota. And I'm in practice, going through a normal drill like we do every single day. mind you, my left leg, my torn ACL leg feels great. I'm back. I'm better than I ever was before. I'm as athletic as I ever was. I'm as fast as I ever was. But something happens. I go to pass the ball, and my right leg buckles a little bit, and it's the same feeling that I felt before on the left one. So, when I felt it on the left one, I didn't know what the feeling was, and I was confused. But in this practice, on the right one, I knew exactly what I did. And my eyes opened wide, and I looked at my coach, and he looked back at me, and he was like, "What, was it a good pass?" And I said, "Nah, I tore my ACL." And he looks at me in a way that I'll remember forever, kind of doubting me, but also like, nah, man, get out of here. Like, that's not true, but also kind of believing me because I've done it before. And I was like, "Nah, man, I did." And he's like, "Stay positive. Like, everything's going to be good. We're going to be all right." And I get in the training room, and my new athletic trainer here at the University of Minnesota does the exact same test, the Lockman's test. And he didn't give me the same response as my first trainer did. He's stayed pretty stoic and told me, "Let's go get an MRI." And so I go through the same process that I went through 14 months ago. I get in the MRI machine, and I wait for a call from the doc. I receive a call from the doc, and he told me that I tore my anterior cruciate ligament in my right knee, along with my lateral and my medial meniscus. So the exact same thing that I did to my left knee 14 months ago was just redone to me, to my right knee. And the emotions flooded. I'll admit I'm an emotional guy. I play with emotion on the court if you ever see me play. I love the game, and that's what made it hurt so much, is the fact that I'm going to have to be out of the game for a long time, another 12 to 14 months. And that, that emotion that floods over you, and we'll talk about it with future guests here on the pod, is something that's kind of undescribable, and it's something that you can't feel unless you go through it. There's doubt, there's second guessing, there's, every emotion you could possibly feel, you feel it in a matter of seconds. And then I get on the phone and I call my mom and I tell her, I'm crying already. And she's like, what's wrong? And I was like, I did it again. I tore my ACL again. And, she just breaks down. And, I told her, I was like, I'm going to be all right. Like, I'm made for it. I'm going to be all right. And I'll remember forever what Coach Thorson told me. He's like, you're different. This is the thing that a lot of people can't do, but you can do it because you're different. And from that moment on, I was like, you're right. Like, I can. And I talked about it with my family, my mom, my brother, and my dad. Is, like I said, they're my biggest support system, and they're behind me every single step of the way. So, I did the same thing. I started grinding. I started getting ready for surgery. We'll talk about it more, but there's a lot of things you got to do pre-surgery to get ready for, going into an ACL surgery. And I killed it. I knew I'd kill it because it's something I love. And, a lot of people told me, after I got my surgery, it's like, is this it for you? Like, you're going into your 6th year of college basketball. Like, you have 2 torn ACLs. Like, you're just going to hang them up and get a job. And I laugh at that. And it's a joke to me. It's like, no, man, this is what's making me, this adversity is what's making me into be the player that I'm going to be, whether it's here at Minnesota, whether it's overseas, whether it's in the NBA, whatever it may be. Like, this is my dream. This is my life. Like, when you're growing up liking sports, some people go from liking to loving sports, and then some people go from loving to living sports. And I live basketball. Basketball is my life. So quitting wasn't an option. So I went into my second ACL surgery on my right knee, and currently I'm about 11 weeks out from surgery, and feeling awesome, feeling better than I felt on my left knee at this point. And I'm just grinding, and I'm working, and I'm super excited to get this podcast going and tell you guys all about injury, all about adversity, sharing the different emotions that come with it. We want to dive into a real mental, emotional side on this podcast with our guests. And, obviously the physical side is brutal. I lost 30 pounds, both surgeries. I lost all muscle in my leg. You lose everything. You lose all your athletic ability. So the physical side is brutal in terms of, fighting it back and getting it back up. But, we on this podcast and the Double Down podcast, we want to focus more on the mental, emotional side and what athletes go through in terms of feelings. A lot of times in our sport, a lot of people think we should just be out there playing the game and doing it for entertainment purposes. But, we're humans, we're people, we are men and women in this sport that, whether it's basketball, whether it's football, whatever sports, we're going to have a lot of sports on the pod. But we feel things and we have emotions that come through, not only when you're told that you have an injury, but the process of the injury itself. I'll share a story, for example, on my second surgery. It was about 6 weeks in after surgery, and I was working on bending my knee. So when you come out of surgery, you can barely bend your knee and you can barely straighten it. It just kind of stays there flat. So 6 weeks after, you're working every single day to bend it, and I could bend it to about 100 degrees. And I remember bending it up to my butt, and it just being painful, and I just broke down. And it wasn't the pain that broke me down. It was all the thoughts and emotions that ran through my head. It's like, oh man, I got to go through this 12-month process again. I got to fight my ass off every single day to get back. It's the overwhelming sense of, how hard this task is, but people don't understand it. The outside world doesn't see the little work you put in, but at the same time, you don't want them to. For me personally, that is, I've grown up on, a lot of different sayings and a lot of different feelings, and one that holds true to this day through my injury process and through my recovery process is work hard in silence. Let your success be your noise. So that's my biggest thing that I focus on, is when I go into the gym and when I'm with my trainers and my therapists and my athletic strength conditioning coaches. Like, I'm working my tail off because I know where I can go and I know what my success can bring me. And that motivates me every single day. So that's kind of the last story on my injury story. But the guests are going to share theirs. I'm going to also tap in with them. But this is episode 1 of the podcast. Just wanted to come on and give you guys a little introduction. I also want to take a quick pause to mention that we are looking for athletic themed brands and companies to support and help grow the pod with me on my new podcast journey. So if you are interested, make sure you reach out to me through all my socials. They'll be found on the descriptions and on the screen and all that kind of stuff. But you can find me, Parker Fox, and the Double Down podcast. And if you're interested in supporting the pod, we would love that. But I'm just going to wrap up with future guests. We got next week, we have a special guest. I'm not going to name it yet, but we have a super special guest, a guy that's super close to me, a guy that's super close to the University of Minnesota. And we're super special to have him on episode 2 of the podcast. So if you're hearing this now, make sure you have your notifications on, you turn that bell on, and you're ready for episode 2 of the pod, because it's going to be a really special story, a story that is kind of similar to my story. But yeah, so that'll be episode 2. It'll come out next week. And I just want to wrap up with thank you to everyone who made this possible. This is only the beginning of a journey that I hope lasts for a very long time. This is something that I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about getting on this mic, telling my story, and motivating the next group of people that could possibly go through an injury that seems like is the end of the world. But I assure you it's not. I assure you it's not the end of the world. It's just a part of your journey. It's just a part of your story. And I know that adversity makes a human stronger, because I've been through it not only once, but twice. And I know how special it can be when you're done with it, when you overcome it. So like I said, this podcast is all about emotion. It's all about mental health. It's all about the physical grind that it takes to overcome adversity and injury in sport. And I'm super excited to be bringing it to you guys from the WaterWave podcast studio here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So with that being said, I'm signing out on episode 1. It's been your boy Parker Fox and the Double Down podcast, and I'm so excited to start this journey with you guys. Peace out.